It's not working. Oh, there we go. Hello.
Hello.
And welcome to another Rich Alvarez live stream. I'm Rich Alvarez.
And I'm Chris Muller.
And today we're going to be doing a very special Top 5 Live, which is very special because it's just like every other Top 5 Live we do. So not special at all. It's just today we're doing the PS2. You guys voted, as you can see here by the poll, the newest Facebook poll. PS2 beat out Switch games by a margin of, I believe, 16%, which is pretty impressive. I would have thought the Switch would have won, but I would have thought the Switch would have won last time, and Super Nintendo won last time. But here we are
Very
with
nice.
a PS2. Now,
Here we
PS2,
go.
PS2 is one of my favorite consoles of all time. It actually, I believe, has had more games on it than any other console, except for, if we're counting PC. But PS2, it came out at an interesting time in my life. I think I was 13 when the PlayStation 2 came out. And so it was kind of like those formative early teen years and, so many great games and man, what a great system. Anyways.
Yeah, and I wanted to mention I did not own a PS2 growing up. So my exposure to these games was watching friends play. So I'll just tell you guys straight up now, I never played any of these games from beginning to finish. So Rich is going to have a much deeper insight on PlayStation 2 than I will. But I mean, I grew up around all my friends playing these games. I remember years later just reading, interesting articles and watching retrospective video reviews on why some of these games were special. So again, Rich is really going to take the lead here since he actually played through this and then has, much more hands-on experience, but I'll kind of chime in as a bit of an outsider. But I just wanted to let you guys know straight up, I have not played any of these games from start to finish. I've mostly just dabbled a little bit in them.
Very nice. So, anyways, as usual, PlayStation 2 had a lot of games. If you guys have PS2 favorites that you would like to add to our honorable mentions, you can go ahead and super chat us, and we will mention you by name and what the game is, and we will get to it during our honorable mentions, which will come after number 3. But right now, we're gonna get to our number 5 pick, and of course, our number 5 pick. Well, again, there were so many games on the PS2. Every single one of these games is great, and there was a lot of great games that are just gonna have to wait till honorable mentions. But number 5 is Shadow of the Colossus. Shadow of the Colossus was a revolutionary action adventure game. It actually, in my opinion, didn't even get enough credit when it originally came out, but I feel like it has become a very big cult classic now, and we're actually looking at the remastered footage now. It's beautiful. But it inspired kind of a wave of these sort of indie adventure games. But it is still just an incredible experience. I really feel like after sorry, I'm a brain fart here. I was like watching this HD footage and going, wow, that looks really great. Anyways, what I want to say is, like, for example, this game came out at a time where kind of like the adventure slash RPG genre was kind of evolving a little bit, and I really feel like Shadow of the Colossus had a lot to do with how those kinds of games formulated afterwards, which is a big reason why I think that it goes under the radar a little bit. I mean, I feel like a lot of people know Shadow of the Colossus now because people keep comparing games to it, but at the time that it came out, I feel like a lot of other developers looked at it and kind of copied it. Like, I feel like Elder Scrolls, for example, is a little bit different now because of Shadow of the Colossus. And of course, when you begot the Elder Scrolls, you beget the Breath of the Wild, and I really feel I was already calling Shadow of the Colossus kind of Dark Zelda when it came out, because it's this, big open world adventure game, but it's like it was dead and decrepit, and you're in this abandoned, it looks like an ancient world, but it also feels post-apocalyptic, which is exactly how I would describe Breath of the Wild. And I really feel like Breath of the Wild took a lot of cues from Shadow of the Colossus. I mean, you could just, even looking at it
Yeah.
now, it looks like a less colorful Breath of the Wild.
In fact, if you don't mind, so again, I did not play this game. I watched some friends play it, and then to refresh myself on this, when Rich said it took Breath of the Wild took inspiration from this game, let me just read you the synopsis real quick. So this is the synopsis for Shadow of the Colossus if you hop on Wikipedia. Shadow of the Colossus. The game's storyline focuses on a young man named Wander who enters a forbidden land. Wander must travel across a vast expanse on horseback and defeat 16 massive beings known simply as Colossi in order to restore the life of a girl named Mono. Is that how you say it?
I believe.
Um, but anyway, I thought that was interesting, right? Because like Link in Breath of the Wild, like you wake up, you're kind of in this sort of deserted area, and you got to restore Zelda back to life, or at least I mean not technically, she's kind of in a weird. Well, you guys get what I'm saying. It draws inspiration, so I thought that was interesting. And another thing I wanted to mention real quick that I've always heard about this game is its minimalist design, because another thing from the Wikipedia articles, they said Shadow of the Colossus is sorry, Shadow of the Colossus is unusual within the action adventure genre, and that there are no towns or dungeons to explore, no characters with whom to interact, and no enemies to defeat other than the Colossi. So it's very I've always described it as it has this very lonely kind of empty feeling to it, which is very different than many other games. So that minimalist design really did make it stand out, and to this day, if you're on Reddit or you're on YouTube, I constantly see people talk about this as being one of the greatest, like most underrated games of all time.
Yeah.
Because if you look at the top selling PS2 games just by sales, this is not on there. Like it's not even in like the top 50. I didn't even see it in like it. So it was very much like kind of a cult following that slowly got popularity over time. But anyway, that's from what I've seen, a very good game, and someday I probably should play this.
It is truly a adventure exploration game with some boss battles thrown in there, and yeah, all you do is boss battles. And I know I like it a lot. It's really cool. Anywho, let's get on to our number 4. Our number 4 game is. Are you ready for it?
I'm ready.
He was on the thumbnail. It's Kratos himself, God of War, and it's really funny because now I feel like you have to have an asterisk every time you say God of War, because the new God of War 4 is God of War. It's really confusing. The new God of War game is just also called God of War, and that was some weird marketing ploy by Sony because they wanted to like attract new fans, even though everybody knows what God of War is, and they could have easily called it God of War 4. But like, we don't want people to feel like they need to play the first 3 to play this one, even though there's so many plot points in the new one that you won't understand if you haven't played the first 3. It's stupid. I don't know whose idea was that. Should have been just called God of War 4. Anyways, this is the true God of War original. And it made my list above the other, I think the only other PS2 God of War was God of War 2. I really like this first one. To me, this was, I mean, there's a lot of hack and slash games. Prince of Persia comes to mind, and I'll just, spoiler alert, Prince of Persia is on honorable mentions. It did not make this list. But because God of War is the ultimate hack and slash on the PS2. Kratos kind of became somewhat of an icon of Sony because in the original days of the PS1, Sony they were trying to, in order to compete with the market, they were trying to come up with their own mascot, but Sony is obviously a legendary publisher, didn't really have a strong development like Sony Computer Entertainment America and Sony Computer Entertainment Japan. These were mostly publishers. And so, like, they had licensed developers to make games for the PS1, and so during the PS1 era, we got icons like Crash Bandicoot and Lara Croft and Solid Snake, but of course, all of these games were developed by other companies. There was some examples of Sony trying to do original stuff, but it wasn't really until God of War, I believe, that they had a true icon, because Sony, of course, published and developed God of War, and of course Kratos became an icon of PlayStation. So I mean, that's one little food for thought there, but also this is just, again, it has incredible mechanics. It took the simple button mashing hack and slash and took it to the next level with cool combinations, quick time events, just awesome upgrades to your weapons, and just really sick and really creative enemies. The whole thing is based on mythology. Kratos, has to fight Ares, who is the god of war, hence the title. And it is really fun. It is really cool, very, very visually stimulating, and it is just excellent. Anyway.
Yeah, this is one of those games where one of my cousins had this, and whenever I'd hang out with him, I'd watch him play God of War 1 and 2. And I always loved Greek mythology, so I thought they did a really good job of pulling in that Greek mythos. And then, it's like Rich said, when it comes to the hack and slash genre, like there were a lot of people that tried to knock this game off. One I thought of was Dante's Inferno. It's a great example of so many people that were inspired by how well God of War did for the hack and slash genre. But yeah, I mean, this is just a classic. Even people who have never owned a Sony console like myself were aware of this game and remember how big it was when it came out in the mid 2000s. So there we go.
Excellent game. And I think that's said enough about it. All right, Chris, we're going to get to our number 3. Everybody, before we get to this, just want to remind you one more time. After number 3 here, we're going to do our honorable mentions. So don't forget to get your super chats in, and we will get to your honorable mentions as well. I'm trying to put that hard H on there. Well. All right. So, number 3. Another one. These are all, I'm going to just keep saying these are my favorite games because these are some of my favorite games. I say that on every list. I'm like, those are my favorite games. But I've played a lot of games. Anyways, our number 3 is Grand Theft Auto San Andreas. And you might be thinking, why San Andreas over Vice City or Grand Theft Auto 3? Well, Grand Theft Auto 3, incredibly revolutionary. I mean, completely different for the Grand Theft Auto was a top-down car series before Grand Theft Auto 3. So obviously you got to give some credit to Grand Theft Auto 3 for reinventing the wheel as far as open world 3D games like this go. And so many games are, took from that. But I really think that it was perfected in San Andreas. Vice City was a lot of fun, but it was really perfected in San Andreas in the way that you can customize your character. You can eat and get fat, or you can work out and make your character huge and buff. I mean, that's just one example of how much customization you can have. You can change their clothes, their hairstyles. It's really amazing.
Yeah, and I wanted to mention quickly, I was curious what the top selling PS2 game of all time was, and it is San Andreas by a lot. San Andreas is the number 1 top selling PS2 game of all time. It had 17 million copies sold, and it didn't come out until 2004, which is really impressive.
The late PS2 game.
Yeah.
And I actually thought that Grand Theft Auto 5 was the top selling game of all time, but it was beat out by Minecraft, of course.
Yeah, that was interesting. We as far as overall. And then yeah, so Rich, I think you were going to mention something else about this game. What world did this introduce us to, or what, I guess
so
map?
Of course, this game introduces us to several cities in the fake state of San Andreas, which is California, but most prominently Los Santos, which is expanded on greatly in Grand Theft Auto 5. And Los Santos is LA, Los Angeles for the most part. Grand Theft Auto always has their fake names for cities, but it's Los Santos, which is LA. And this game, again, I've mentioned the customization, but also just incredible characters, really compelling storyline, inspired mostly from Spike Lee films, like Do the Right Thing, and there's a lot of Boys in the Hood in here as well. And it's just an incredible experience. And I just recently played the remastered version last year, I think, or something like that. It still holds up pretty good. As far as Grand Theft Auto games goes, this is still probably the second best one because I'm thinking of GTA 5.
GTA 5,
but we'll get to that in another list.
Yeah, which by the way, I did end up. I'll just say quickly, the only Grand Theft Auto game I ever played was GTA 5, and the reason I played GTA 5 was because by that point I had an Xbox 360 and I had so much fun playing Red Dead Redemption 1 that I was like, okay, I gotta give GTA a try. And I gotta say, the GTA games are so fun. Oh man, are they fun.
Unfortunately for anybody who cares about exclusives, because we talk about these best games on consoles, and this was the kind of sort of the GameCube PS2 era was sort of the last era for almost everything being a console exclusive. So because now most games today are made for pretty much everything, which is kind of ruins
which really means PC.
Yeah, I mean, I'm gonna get anything on these days. I get everything on PC unless it's exclusive, like Final
Yeah.
Fantasy VII. But yeah, for the most part, this was the last generation of like console exclusives being a huge thing. And because Grand Theft Auto San Andreas and all the Grand Theft Autos were PS2 exclusives until very late. I think late 2005 or 2006 is when Rockstar lost their contract with Sony ended, and then all of these games ended up becoming, there was like a Grand Theft Auto collection for the Xbox in like late 2005 or 2006 that included GTA 3, Vice City, and San Andreas. But these were originally exclusives for the PS2. And I think
Very
that,
nice.
yeah, I think that it was best on the PS2. I'm biased, of course.
So with that said, though, if somebody were to play a GTA game for their first time, would you recommend GTA 5?
If you're playing a Grand Theft Auto game for the first time, play Grand Theft Auto 5.
Okay, because that's how I experienced it. So when I look at this, I can see this is where the roots are. But I mean, yeah, I can see that it starts here with the Los Santos, and then 5 is just amazing.
Yeah.
So
Okay, so I've got another compilation of PlayStation games here. While we talk about, just like usual, I don't have time to like, while you guys are mentioning honorable mentions, or while we're to like actually go through each of those videos. So I just have a video of just general PS2 games to go through while we talk about our honorable mentions, and there are an astronomical amount of honorable mentions that we can mention, and I'll mention a few. Everybody join in with your super chat honorable mentions, and we'll get to those as well. All
so
right.
go ahead, Rich. What's the first honorable mention that you want to discuss?
Well, I lost the list we made, so I'll just go off of
Oh,
memory.
it's okay. I have them.
I know
But
that one of
there's
them is
there's
Kingdom Hearts.
that's yeah. So go ahead. Go ahead.
So, guys, Kingdom Hearts, you've heard me talk about it, my love-hate relationship with Kingdom Hearts in previous videos. Kingdom Hearts, Tetsuya Nomura's child, for better or for worse, and I think that he basically, let all of his creative juices out with Kingdom Hearts, and Kingdom Hearts, especially the first one, it's really good. It's for the most part it's lighthearted. You get to go to different Disney worlds. It's played in a Final Fantasy style with a lot of there's Kingdom Hearts right there, or at least one of them. Add a lot of you could jump and move and fight around. It was very action RPG, and it really was kind of a change of pace a little bit. I think the thing that bogs all of Kingdom Hearts down, and the reason why it wouldn't make my top five list, is because of it's the convoluted storyline and confusing plot points, which I mean are kind of a staple of Final Fantasy. But I don't know, they're a little bit more appreciated in Final Fantasy than they are in a game that was supposed to be about Goofy and Donald. Like, I don't know. It's interesting. As you find my wiki Richie about it. That kind of sets the tone of what I think about it, I guess.
What were your like to end it on a positive note? What were your favorite parts of Kingdom Hearts? Like when you look back on that game, what's like
Level
the best
design.
memories?
Level design is really good. Like especially Agrabah. There are some low points like Atlantis, but
what's the best part,
sorry.
Richie? Let me mention the low points.
Really cool boss battles. Like just again the setup for all those is really good. And it's good. I would give Kingdom Hearts might make a top 10 list, but not a top 5. I don't know. That's all I want to say about that.
We I'll briefly mention the music. Well, the one that I'll always remember when Kingdom Hearts came out, and this is somebody who never played it. I had a cousin who had a PS2, and I always would watch him play. But I remember that classics. This was I believe the trailer, or what was the when you walk away. You know what I'm talking about?
That's,
like what was that? Was that in the game, or
that's
was
in the
that just
game.
a promotional trailer?
That's
Okay.
like
the
that's
theme basically.
It's kind of the theme of the first game.
Like
kind of.
I hear that song and it just makes me super nostalgic for the I guess the early to mid 2000s. So anyway, I think that adding all the Disney characters really hit the nostalgia hard, because as you're visiting all these Disney worlds, you're like revisiting your childhood in a sense, because I imagine many of you watched those classic Disney Renaissance and, well, golden age Disney movies growing up. So I'd say as far as nostalgia goes, they nailed it. Anyway, oh, Richie, we have a couple super chats now.
We do, and I'm
So
going to get to those in a second. The last thing I want to
perfect.
say about Kingdom Hearts is I think the best, the most memorable song to me is the theme, the actual series theme song, which is the doon doo doon doo doon doo 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 doo. You know, I can't really
I
hum
know
it very
exactly
well,
what you're talking about.
but it's great.
That's another song. Now, was that Nobu Uematsu or was that somebody else?
I believe that was somebody else.
Okay, sorry for putting you on the spot. But point is, that song, even if you've never played Kingdom Hearts, if you hear that song, it just makes you feel all like, like bittersweet and nostalgic. Ugh, so good.
Awesome.
Cool. Any other thoughts on Kingdom Hearts, or should we move to the super
Let's move on to super chats. I do
Okay.
want to mention Persona. I know that EDMG7 just said, thank you, EDMG7, for super chatting Persona 5. I was actually going to mention Persona 3 because I prefer Persona 3, but
Well, what's the difference between Persona 4 and
so
Persona 3?
Persona, it's actually, the Persona series is actually a spin-off of another series, and for some reason I can't think of it right now. I know I'm going to get slammed for this later, but I just, I've got so many things on my mind right now. It's shoot, somebody's going to mention it as soon as they hear this. It's but anyways, yeah, so Persona, it is a great series, especially Persona 3. I really feel like Persona 4 is also really good. In fact, even more so than the game, I feel like the anime actually holds up really well because they made actually Persona 4 the animation. It's like a 24 episode anime series that goes over the entire story of the game. It's actually something a lot more video games, in my opinion, should do.
And
But
real quick, Rich, for somebody who has never played Persona and has really no idea what it's about, could you give the elevator pitch of like, this is what the series is about?
it's really hard to explain. Very, very much like Final Fantasy, every Persona game has a new cast of characters, and so it doesn't really follow a singular hero. Every game has their own like little like their characters and their mascot. Like so in Persona 4 it's the bear. I'm very excited.
Oh yeah.
That guy. And I think that and again, if you haven't played the game and you're not interested in playing, the game but want to know more about it, I could not recommend more the Persona 4 the anime series. It really is a fantastic anime series. And they did really just fantastic job of adapting that perfectly to anime. I will gush about that anime series anytime. Thank you everyone in the comments. It's the Shin Megami Tensei franchise. I knew that I couldn't remember it because it was really complicated. But basically there's the Shin Megami Tensei franchise, which is an RPG franchise, and then there was one game that was called Shin Megami Tensei Persona, and that became really popular, so they started making sequels to that. Does that make sense? It's kind of like how there's like Final Fantasy Tactics, and then there's Final Fantasy Tactics Advance, and so on. It's like it was a spin-off, and then they made sequels to that spin-off. But sequels
That makes sense.
So there are obviously connections between the games. Like there's the guy on the train or whatever. The old guy. Welcome. I think his name is like Igor or something. I can't remember at the moment. I'm also going to get crap for that. It's been a minute since I actually played a Persona game. Persona games are really good. But Persona 4 the animation excellent, but Persona 3, I was a little less, like, I don't know how to say it. Like Persona 4 was great, but it's a little bit more lighthearted. I really like how dark and mysterious Persona 3 was. Anyways, let's get to some of these other honorable mentions here. We got Marty Man, who super chatted Metal Gear Solid 2 Sons of Liberty. Now, of course, I was going to talk about Metal Gear Solid. Metal Gear Solid 2. It's pretty good. For me, it was a little bit like, I always do this with games, especially first. Like, I was disappointed by Fallout 3 at first because it wasn't anything like Fallout 2, which I loved. And then I eventually grew to love Fallout 3, but even more so, New Vegas. But we're not talking about PS3 games right now. But yeah. Anyways, as far as Metal Gear Solid 2 goes, Metal Gear Solid on the PS1, would definitely be in my top 5 games of all time, period, regardless of console. When we get to Metal Gear Solid 2, I was one of those guys that was really disappointed that you only play as Solid Snake for like the first, I don't know, 20 minutes of the game, and then you switch to Raiden, and he's just annoying as crap. And the story is still pretty good. Snake eventually comes back in as a side character, but to me, just kind of like being a different character and sort of watching Snake do cool stuff. I know that was, Hideo Kojima thought that was a great idea, but it wasn't.
Oh boy.
And I don't know. To me, I've always said Metal Gear Solid 2: Sons of Liberty is kind of the weak link. I really do feel like it's the worst Metal Gear Solid game.
And that's because Metal Gear Solid 1 was so good.
Yeah, and
I remember watching. I actually, one of my favorite memories of Rich and I when it comes to video games is there was one day Rich was like, Chris, you need to see me play through all of Metal Gear Solid. So literally in one sitting, I think it took like 4 or 5, maybe 6 hours, we sat down and Richie played through it from beginning to end, and that was my introduction to the Metal Gear Solid series. And I still remember I was like, well, what about Metal Gear Solid 2? And he was like, just watch like a YouTube cutscene mashup, and then we'll jump to the next one, which I'll leave it at that. But
yeah.
I mean, it's a great franchise. Obviously, Rich liked it so much. He included Snake in Super Mario Bros. And of course, there's been, I know that we're mostly a Nintendo channel, but Nintendo brought Snake into Super Smash Brothers, so obviously there's a lot of crossover. Yeah, you guys get what I'm saying. Great game. Well, great series.
Great series. Again, Metal Gear Solid 1 on the PS1, one of my favorite games of all time. A really great follow-up to Metal Gear and Metal Gear 2 from the 80s and early 90s. For anybody who has played that, which is like probably no one here. I gotta restart this compilation video because it just ended.
Yeah, no worries. One of these days, Rich, you should, I don't think you ever did, but you should do like a Richie Wiki or a vlog or even just a live stream where you just explain the entirety of the Metal Gear Solid series.
God,
where you go back
take
to the
hours.
beginning. I'd watch it.
Speaking of convoluted,
I watched you play the original. Well, the Metal Gear Solid 1
I make fun of Tetsuya Nomura for making convoluted stories, but Hideo Kojima.
Yeah.
So, anyways, Metal Gear Solid, great series, but Metal Gear Solid 2 probably, I'm going to say, is probably because we got Metal Gear Solid 5 now. It was my least favorite until Metal Gear Solid 5.
Oh gosh, okay, yeah, I get it. Cool. Any other thoughts on Metal Gear? Or did you want to move on to the next super chat?
Let's move on to the next super chat, which is Brett Sucks. Thank you for super chatting, Brett Sucks. You have donated $2 to Dark Cloud, or to us for Dark Cloud, I should say. So Dark Cloud, a great PS2 game. There are literally thousands of games on the PS2, so and there was so many good ones. So there's a lot.
Yeah.
Dark Cloud was also. What's up?
Oh, sorry. Go ahead. You go.
No, you go.
Oh, I was gonna say I'd never heard of this, so I just pulled up the Wikipedia thing because I was curious. So I'll just read the synopsis here. It says,
excellent.
Dark Cloud, uniquely combining the mechanisms of action role-playing games with elements of city building, Dark Cloud tells the story of a group of adventurers who band together to fight against the Dark Genie, who has attacked and destroyed many villages. The main protagonist and player character is Toan, a boy who is given a magical stone called the Atlamia by Simba, the Fairy King, granting him the power to rebuild the destroyed lands. So it's interesting because I'm looking at the cover of this game and he almost looks like Link because he has like a little green cap on. But I had never heard of this series, but just that little synopsis sounds kind of cool. Did you ever play that, Rich, or were you aware of it?
I am aware of Dark Cloud. I actually never got a chance to play it, but it looks amazing, and I had heard good things about it.
And it looks like they made a PS4 port, according to Wikipedia.
Yeah, I'm going to have to get to that. I also want to read another comment that Brett Sucks said a little bit more recently, because he was touching on something that I was talking about, because I was talking about how much I like New Vegas more than Fallout 3. And he said, I actually liked Fallout 3 better than New Vegas simply because of the environment. Bland deserts just don't convey the setting of post-apocalyptic wasteland quite like the bombed-out ruins of DC. Now, I'm just going to say, I know that, things are subjective a lot, but Fallout 1 and 2 were very much in the California desert. And to me, the post-apocalypse is the desert. If you are familiar with the Mad Max series, which I believe really set the tone for post-apocalyptic media, it's all desert. I know that it's not necessarily the most realistic thing for the post-apocalypse to just be desert, but somehow that the Mad Max series kind of set the tone, and the Fallout games, original Fallout games, kind of set that precedence as well. And so when Fallout 3 was the first one developed by Bethesda, and they did it in the city, which is one of the reasons I didn't like it at first, because to me it just didn't feel like Fallout. And then we get to New Vegas, which was developed by Obsidian, and they hired or had a lot of people working for Obsidian at the time that had worked on the first 2 Fallout games, and they brought it back to California, which I really appreciated. So to me, New Vegas feels like the true Fallout 3. And post-apocalypse to me is always going to be the desert. That's all I wanted to say. I know that has nothing to do with anything we're talking about. Anyways, we're going to move on.
What did we learn? If you want to get Richie's attention, start talking about
Fallout
Fallout and
debate.
He'll watch the whole chat turn into a Fallout conversation.
Marty Man super chatted again, and he says Guitar Hero games. Yes.
Ooh, I actually have a lot to say about this.
I mean, Guitar Hero games are fun, but I don't really associate them with PS2 because you could get Guitar Hero on, I think, anything, right? Or maybe I'm thinking of the Rock Band.
I don't know if Guitar Hero or Rock Band originally came out on the PS2, but I will say my first introduction to the series was on a PS2. And I remember, at least for me, it was like 2006, 2007. It was like the mid to late 2000s. Percussion games exploded, because remember, this was an era where we had Dance Dance Revolution, and then when Guitar Hero came out, nobody had ever really played anything like it. I remember every high school hangout I went to in that era, people were playing Guitar Hero or Rock Band. I mean, even Richie and I got super into it with Beatles Rock Band a few years later. And then, they made a Green Day Rock Band. They made all these spin-offs. I think it was a fad that people really got into, and then all of a sudden it felt as if overnight everybody got bored with it and moved on, and then they just stopped making the games. But I mean, when they first came out, I remember everybody was obsessed with that franchise. So I think that's a great contribution to the era, because when I do think of kind of the mid to late 2000s, that's one of those games I'm like, oh yeah, that was the Guitar Hero era. So yeah.
I just want to also point out that Brett Sucks says we can agree to disagree, and I like I said, all that stuff is very subjective, and we can have different opinions. And sorry, I didn't mean to put you on the spot there. I just feel very strongly about Fallout is all. But thank you, nice. Brett Sucks, and thank you for being a subscriber, and thank you for watching the video. And I've seen you obviously in many of these before, so I appreciate your continued viewership.
There we go.
I just wanted to tell him how much I appreciate him, and I didn't mean to put him on the spot. Anyways, so yeah. Anyways, there's a lot of other great games. We can even see some of them in this compilation. Dragon Quest VIII, comes to mind. What are other honorable mentions?
I actually had one I wanted to mention.
Oh,
real
go
quick.
ahead.
Sly Cooper. My one of my buddies had the original Sly Cooper, and I remember when I played that, it reminded me of the aesthetic of a Rareware game. So it felt like an evolution of Banjo-Kazooie. When I was playing Sly Cooper, I remember I was like, wait a minute, did Rareware make this? What the heck? Obviously, Rareware went from Nintendo to Microsoft, so that could not have been the case. But I just remember the puzzles. It felt like a puzzle platformer.
It was very much inspired by the Rareware games, I believe.
Yeah. So,
and there's also Jack and Daxter,
Ratchet and Clank.
So many of those. There was a lot of games on the PS2, guys.
Yeah. I guess my point is I've always had a soft spot for platforming, and I feel like the PS2 really did kind of take what got super popular from that era and polished it. So even though, like I said, I didn't own a PS2, I remember playing a lot of Sly Cooper at my friend's house and just loving that game, and was thinking to myself, man, if I got a PS2, I could play more Sly Cooper.
See, and again, because we're talking about an era where things were starting to not be exclusive anymore, it's like, for example, I'd really love to talk about Max Payne. Max Payne is one of my favorite games, but that was also on the Xbox, so it wasn't exclusive to PS2.
Yeah.
So, it's hard to talk about some games like that, but Max Payne was also really great in this era.
Very nice.
Man, I know I'm forgetting a ton just because there were so many, but anyways, we should probably move on.
Yeah, we're going to
Anyways,
move on. And by the way, guys, feel free to continue to post in the chat. If you'd like to super chat, we'll still come back and revisit any future super chats in the video. But for now, we're going to jump into the number 2 and number 1.
okay. Our number 2 game is Metal Gear Solid 3 Snake Eater.
All right.
I didn't want to give away any spoilers earlier when I was talking about Metal Gear Solid 2. But we're talking about Metal Gear Solid 3 here. Metal Gear Solid 3, it is out of Metal Gear Solid 2 and 3, which were the PS2 games. I really feel like Metal Gear Solid 3 was the stronger one. Like I said, Metal Gear Solid 2 was a little disappointing to me because you played as Raiden most of the time, and you didn't really get to play as Snake. This game, Metal Gear Solid 3, was incredibly unique because now we're going back to the late 1960s during the Cold War and playing as Big Boss, who, and again, maybe I should do that Metal Gear timeline because the whole thing is really confusing. But basically, your Big Boss, aka Naked Snake, who is sort of Solid Snake's father, kind of. Everything's in asterisk / question mark because of the weird, there's cloning, there's les infanteries, there's all this crap, and then Big Boss comes out at the end of Metal Gear Solid 4 to tell you that everything is wrong in a lot of ways. So it's very, very, very confusing. And yeah, the more I talk about it, the more I think it would be cool to do kind of an analysis breakdown video, but it would probably be like 2 hours long. But anyways, let's go. Sorry, what?
Yeah. I was just going to say, if you wanted to do that, because I know editing it would be extremely tedious, that would actually be a fun potential live stream where you just have all the stuff queued up and you just, pull up the Wikipedia articles, pull up the videos. Anyway, I would love that personally because I've loved the Metal Gear Solid franchise. But anyway, continue on Metal Gear Solid 3.
Anyways, instead of talking about the confusing heritage and timeline of Metal Gear Solid, I'll just talk about the great things about this game specifically. Metal Gear Solid 3 was fantastic because of just this feeling that you were actually playing a Cold War. I've always said that Metal Gear Solid 3 is the best James Bond video game of all time because, because it really made you feel like you were a secret agent on a Cold War mission going into the jungle and, getting info, taking down villains and it's basically everything you'd ever want from a James Bond game, but it's not a James Bond game. It really makes you want to think that it is a James Bond game. Even the theme of Snake Eater at the beginning is like, I'm still in a dream, Snake Eater. And it's very, very James Bond-esque. The whole game is very self-aware that it is a James Bond ripoff, but it does James Bond better than James Bond. Which is a cool thing on its own. And again, you are Naked Snake, aka Big Boss, still voiced by David Hayter at this point. I'm looking at you very angrily, Metal Gear Solid 5. It's still David Hayter, and it still feels like Snake, but he feels a little bit different because it's Big Boss technically. But they really they went in a completely different direction. They went in the past, and it just feels really fresh and good. And, man, it's a just excellent game. Took stealth to the next level. You could change your camo to better suit your environment. Basically took everything. Look at that. It says, for example, this whoever's playing this has olive drab on. And you could see the percentage of the camo in the corner. And it's how hidden you are. Right now there's 0% hidden. They're out in the open.
Wow.
So the really cool mechanics like that. It really took Metal Gear and stealth games to the next level. And oh man, I could talk about it forever, but it's so good.
A couple things I want to chime in on. First off, Rich, do you remember around this time there was a crab battle flash animation on I think Newgrounds that got really popular?
Yeah, I know.
Crab battle. You guys know what I'm talking about. It's just so that just shows how iconic this game was, that there were some super viral pre-YouTube videos that went big on Newgrounds, or maybe it was around the time YouTube took off, but I saw that. And then of course the last thing, Rich, that you have to mention is what was the movie series that inspired, or the movie that inspired Metal Gear Solid?
I mean, actually, Hideo Kojima, the creator of Metal Gear, has a lot of inspirations for Metal Gear, but mostly, at least as far as the character of Snake goes, was Escape from New York. If you've never seen Escape from New York, Kurt Russell plays a character in that movie called Snake, wears an eye patch, has a mullet, and goes around call me Snake, you know, like
And it's Snake Plissken. Was that his name?
Snake Plissken, and
Yeah.
which is cool because when Snake when you play as Raiden in Metal Gear Solid 2, when Snake is he when he's pretending to be dead, he goes by the code name Plissken, which is a direct reference to Snake Plissken from Escape from New York. Escape from LA is a sequel in the 90s, is not as good. Escape from New York is a classic.
Very nice.
Anyways,
Cool. Well, Metal Gear Solid, everyone. Metal Gear Solid 3.
yeah, I've seen a lot of things in the comments. I will, but we got to move on. Unless again, we will still mention your super chats if you super chat, and yeah, I think we're gonna move on to our number one. Are you ready, Chris?
I'm really excited to hear you go all out on this. So here we are, ladies and gentlemen.
What possibly could have been the number one PS2 game of all time? Why, of course, it's Final Fantasy X. What else would it be?
And I'll say this, Rich. Because this game came out so long ago, I actually kind of do hope that you talk about some of the spoilers that made this game amazing, because you spoiled it for me and it just blew my mind hearing about the plot and the twists at the end. I mean, your call if you want to spoil it or not, but I remember when I asked you to explain the plot to me and why the ending was so powerful, I was just like totally like just zoned in and like fascinated by
the funny thing is
plot.
They've just recently, I mean, there are HD versions of this, even an updated HD version of this. You can play Final Fantasy X on Steam and it looks great. So it's like, I would still recommend playing. You can play this game today and it still it holds up today, is all I'm saying. It's really great. So I don't know how much I want to spoil it, because
Fair enough. Then maybe spoiler free. But could you explain what made this game stand out in the Final Fantasy series? Like, what really made this special?
Man, first of all, as many of you will know, Final Fantasy is one of my favorite series of all time. But my favorite game of all time is Chrono Trigger, made by a lot of the same people over at Square. But Final Fantasy, especially 6, 7, and 10 here, I really feel like 10 is the last great Final Fantasy game. I've always said that. I really like 15 was pretty good. 15 is the first one that feels fun and good since 10, but doesn't come anywhere close. So Final Fantasy X is, in my opinion, the last great Final Fantasy game. It was also the last Final Fantasy game to have input by Hinorobu Sakaguchi, who is the creator of Final Fantasy. So, go figure. And it's just an amazing experience, a very, very dreamlike on a lot of...
Yes.
Hey guys, it's, for anybody who's played the game, wink, wink, nudge, nudge, it's very dreamlike.
Could you briefly explain the plot of this game for those who have never played it?
Tidus, your main character here, he's a famous blitzball player, and blitzball is this underwater football type game, American football type game. I guess it's kind of soccer-ish too, so international football type. It's underwater, guys, and you play with a ball. It's really cool. And then all of a sudden, his world is looks like it's being destroyed, and he gets sucked up into that portal that we just saw. And he ends up in this post-apocalyptic world called Spira. And he's like, hey, I'm from Xanarkand. Xanarkand. And people are like, whoa, Xanarkand, that was destroyed 1,000 years ago. So, interesting enough, this character seems to come from 1,000 years ago, where everything was super high-tech, but now... It's in, again, I'm a sucker for post-apocalyptic stuff. He's in this post-apocalyptic world where all that great tech and everything was destroyed 1,000 years ago. So he's assuming that he got swept up in a time portal and that he's from 1,000 years ago where everything was destroyed. And you meet great characters along the way, like Yuna, of course, and Waka. Kamari, Lulu, and Riku, and I'm probably forgetting some characters, but all fantastic characters, a lot of depth, especially to Yuna and Tidus. Incredible gameplay, really took the turn-based to a next level. You could switch out characters in the middle of a battle. Another excellent Final Fantasy soundtrack. The little mini-map was, a godsend during these, during the long maze-like sections. Just incredible detail in the environments, and just like the exploration was top notch here. There was no overarching. It was the first Final Fantasy game to not have an overarching world map. I guess that's the best way I can describe it, where like you're a little character on like a giant map screen. It was the first one not to have that, but you explore giant areas that take you from place to place, so it kind of made up for it in that way. I just restarted the video since it's kind of a short video. But
Are you able to briefly get into who the bad guy is, or like what the antagonist of the game is?
so I will just say that the antagonist of the game is a creature called Sin, who destroys. He's the destroyer of worlds, and one of the mysteries of the game is figuring out where does this creature come from, and what exactly is it, and why does it constantly kill people and villages, and what is the point of the whole thing. And again, I know I've spoiled everything for Chris, and that really got him interested in everything, but I would still really recommend playing this game.
That's fair for people. Fair enough. Since it's on easily accessible, then that's probably a good call to keep it spoiler free. But that was the part that blew my mind when you find out the truth behind this monster. It was, and then like there's a plot twist at the end of this game that obviously I won't spoil to be respectful. But when Richie explained the clever plot twist at the end, it was like. I was about to compare it to a popular movie, but I almost feel like if I do that, it'll spoil it. It was a brilliant plot twist. Oh, so good. Like the big reveal.
I think, yeah, there's a couple plot twists in this game that I think are really cool. That character there next to Titus is Orin. He's the guy with the arm in his jacket. He's also an incredible character. Very layered character. There are so many good things about this game. I don't even know where to begin. It's just like, this is like Final Fantasy at its best. And whenever I replay Final Fantasy games all the time, and this is definitely one of the ones I've played the most. It really is the last great Final Fantasy game. And there's really nothing else to say about it other than that, unless I go into spoiler territory. but you'll just have to take my word for it. If you've never played a Final Fantasy game, and I do think if you've never played a Final Fantasy game and you have any inkling of getting into Final Fantasy, I recommend starting with 10, because it's pretty much what Final Fantasy is all about. And it has the classic turn-based system, which is what most Final Fantasy games are. Except, again, it does it in a really cool and unique way. Oh, man, I don't know, man. It's just really great.
I still remember that years ago when I first met you and we were getting into Final Fantasy. I remember you told me that 10 is probably the best entrance into the series, and it's the most accessible if you've never played one before. So and I remember everybody talking about this game when it came out. Lots of people cosplayed as characters from this game. So even as somebody who's never played it before, I'm still very nostalgic about this because a lot of my friends talked about it. It was just very much around in like gaming culture at that time.
Yeah.
So.
Well, since Final Fantasy X, Square merged with Enix and became Square Enix. Final Fantasy XI was an MMO, which I did enjoy, but it plays completely different and doesn't really feel like Final Fantasy. 12 was kind of disappointing to me. 13 was really disappointing to me. If you've ever seen any of my videos on it, 13 is just a mess. 14 was another MMO, and it was a huge mess at first, but got better when they patched it up, but still not really Final Fantasy. Final Fantasy 15 actually is pretty cool. It's a really cool open world environment for most of the game. But again, there's something missing to Final Fantasy 15, and I'll never quite be able to explain it, but great characters in Final Fantasy 15. But my point is, if you're looking for great Final Fantasy, it doesn't really get much better than Final Fantasy 10. It's a great place to start.
And the founder of Final Fantasy, what was his name again? The guy, this was the last game he did?
Hinobu Sakaguchi. This was the last game he was involved in,
now, he spun off and made a few games on his own. Did you want to briefly mention those?
I mean, he made his own studio, and he made games like, Blue Dragon, which were a lot of fun, and Lost Odyssey. And nobody ever talks about Lost Odyssey, but Lost Odyssey is a fantastic RPG, and I really wish there would have been more games to it. But look up Lost Odyssey. I think it might have been an Xbox exclusive, because he just went total turncoat.
Yeah.
But yeah, Lost Odyssey. Look it up. Really good. Blue Dragon, also really underrated.
Was there a reason that he left? Was it because the movie came out around that time? Like, off the
So
top of your head,
he
do you remember
was,
why he left?
yeah, Square was going bankrupt, and they blamed him for the Final Fantasy movie, even though it wasn't really his fault, you know. So, and by the way, we're talking about the spirits within the first Final Fantasy movie, not Advent Children, which is like, see, that's what they should have been doing. They should have been actually making movies based on the games, and instead they made Final Fantasy: The Spirits Within a movie that took place on Earth's future, and it was a sci-fi movie. It had nothing to do with Final Fantasy. Was really, really disappointing. Just didn't look or feel anything like Final Fantasy. And of course, they blamed Hinterbu because he was the producer of it. So, you know, it is what it is. They fired him, and he made his own company and made some really good games, but, you know, whatever. Yeah.
There you go. Well, that was a great overview of Final Fantasy X. It's so funny, Richie, because when I listen to you talk about this, it just kind of takes me back to like, oh, geez, 10, 12 years ago on long car rides when you would just go into this extremely detailed overview of the Final Fantasy series and why you like certain games, and then, you know, how the founders split off and did all this other stuff. So it's always really fun listening to you do a deep dive on one of your favorite game series, just because you've gathered so much knowledge about it. So thank you for sharing. That was really good.
Yeah, it's no problem.
Cool.
All right, guys.
I guess that's it. Did you have any, I guess, closing thoughts or anything else you wanted to mention, Rich, about the PS2?
PlayStation 2 is just it's a kind of a lost era almost. It was a really good game. Really good games, really great console. And there was just a phenomenal amount of really great content on it, and the PS2 is definitely one of my favorite. It's just one of my favorite eras of all time. And again, it was my teenage years, so it I don't know. PS2 means a lot to me in the same way that the Super Nintendo was my prepubescent years, and meant a lot to me during those years. PS2. Man, I don't know. PS2, fantastic console, just really means a lot to me. It was like growing up with a friend, you know?
Oh, that's a good way to put it. Yeah. Nice. Well, I guess that pretty much wraps stuff up.
Yeah, thanks for voting, guys, for the PS2.
So did you, I know you and I both have a few announcements. Did you want to mention our next poll?
Yeah, the next poll, which should be up on the RichAlvarez Facebook page, as soon as we're done with this video, I'm going to go make the poll, but it's going to be Nintendo Switch versus PC. So we could either do top 5 PC games or we could do top 5 Switch games. Your choice. Gonna put that poll up.
If it ends up being top 5 PC, that's gonna be so hard. Because I mean, PC it's not like the consoles where it's a specific 5-6 years. It's indefinite. So that,
yes, I know.
That's gonna be a fun one, but a challenging one.
Spoiler alert: StarCraft will be on the list.
Well, yeah. I've got so many I'm thinking of, but we'll save that for when that happens. But if we end up doing Switch, obviously that'll be a little bit easier because it's only been out for like 3 years.
Spoiler alert: with the Switch, Super Mario Odyssey will be on the list.
Yeah. Oh, and then another thing I wanted to mention for you guys is that Monday, July 13th, is the 14-year anniversary of the RichAlvarez channel on YouTube. So we have a tentatively planned, and I say tentatively because we want Matt to be involved in it, and he's finalizing his schedule. But tentatively, we would like to do a live stream starting at 12 o'clock Pacific time. So that would be, 2 p.m. Eastern, 3 p.m. 2 p.m. Central, 3 p.m. Eastern. And we'll announce it on, like Discord and Facebook and Twitter and all that stuff. But tentatively, at 12 o'clock noon Pacific, we're going to do a top 5 live best RichAlvarez videos of all time. So it will be extremely fun because, of course, it's going to be me and Rich and Matt, and each one of us have different favorite memories. So we're just going to get really nostalgic and reminisce about everything. So, like I said, the only thing that might change that is if Matt's schedule is busy. It's more important for us to make sure that Matt is with us on the stream than to do it on the actual day. So, if Matt ends up getting busy, we will kind of adjust to make sure he makes it too. But tentatively, 12 p.m. Pacific on Monday, July 13th. Tentatively set your calendar.
Yep. Pay attention to the
that,
Facebook for updates.
yeah, just like I said, keep an eye out on the Facebook, the Twitter, and the Discord. The Discord is probably the best place to keep in touch with everything, and there's an invite link in the description of this video. So if you guys are not members of the RichAlvarez Discord, super recommend that you join up. I hang out there. Richie hangs out there. Matt's there, as well as some of our other friends. And we've got a really cool fan community. So yeah, I would say just, keep an eye out on that. And the top 5 live RichAlvarez 14-year anniversary retrospective nostalgia look back will be very fun, especially if you're there to enjoy it with us.
And yeah, that was really good explanation, Chris. We lost some viewers with how long that explanation was.
It's because they're leaving right now and marking their calendars and requesting time off work.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you very much, guys. That was the last announcement, right?
Yeah,
Okay.
That's all I have.
Thank you, everybody, for joining us. Tell your friends to subscribe to the RichAlvarez channel because it's a lot of fun. All right, guys. Thank you so much. What?
Richie, could you send us off with the please subscribe voice?
Oh, dear. Please subscribe. It's free and easy, just like telling your friends to subscribe too. Hooray. All right, guys.
Classic.
Bye-bye.
See ya.